Erwin's beard is.
I know, that's what I said. I was like, who's this mountain man?
Like you could go camping in that thing.
Where's your Afro medallion?
Why did it take quarantine for you to wait this long to grow it out?
Dude, I didn't even know it could get like this. I had to push through the nastiness for it to really. Like,
what kind of product do you use?
I'm using a little bit of like Soul Glow.
Oh, product nuts and berries.
All right, y'all.
You do have to.
Live.
Oh boy, you do have to power through a little bit though. Like there's like the in between is not pleasant. Steve, cut that out.
Oh
shit!
You know what? I feel like that's actually a good lead into today's conversation. Is anybody on?
Is it
The middle is going to be hard, but when we push through, keep pushing on the other side, there could be some like.
That's right. What we've learned from Erwin's beard growth and how it applies.
Anything in this conversation, I'm gonna pull it back to Black Lives Matter.
Let's do it.
Black Lives Matter.
Anything in it? That's perfect. That's perfect. I like that idea.
Are you?
Sorry, I'm in the other room making a drink.
Oh, I was like, are you on another call? And you're like,
always late to the game.
I'm just having a libation.
You know, I set mine up right here. She's ready.
I literally am out of alcohol though now. Shit.
Dude, I had all my whiskeys gone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've also some of my Japanese bottles. I've filled up with water with a little bit of whiskey in there, just so I can keep the bottle.
They look good.
Yeah, and I don't know which ones are more water than whiskey. Like I had one of them probably last week or the week before that, and I was like, this tastes kind of watery, but I still taste whiskey. I don't know if this. I don't know if
that sounds like some shit you do when you hit your parents' liquor cabinet when you were a kid. Put water and stuff.
I'm basically trying to fool myself for aesthetic.
That's perfect. Just buy some more whiskey.
Then I just chug bullet. I've gone through a lot of bullets.
Yeah, and I've been drinking a lot of Buffalo Trace. But
I just haven't been drinking.
Wow. Way to jump in with a shame us. We're not alcoholics.
I'm not.
Like to have fun.
Living in difficult times, man. I don't know how you're not drinking. If there's any time to appropriately drink, now is the time. Take the edge off at the end of the day.
Or it's the most dangerous time because you just
That's true.
I literally just bought a 12-pack of Stone. And there's 3 left.
Oh shit.
Well, that was
and every time I do this, I reach in and I'm surprised that there's only 3 left. I'm like, what the fuck? Did somebody come up in here and take some of my beer?
No, that's why I haven't been drinking, because that was me at the beginning of all of this, where I woke up and there was 9 beer bottles in the sink, and I was just like, it was only me. I was this is not good.
You just look around for someone else to blame, and all you see is yourself.
Hey, did you do that?
Yeah.
9 beer bottles in the sink. You don't have a recycle bin or something like that?
You could have hit it. You didn't have to address it.
I'm just making sure all my friends come and join this conversation, just blasting it on the IG, you know what I mean?
Oh.
DMs.
All right, it's 4:00. What we doing? What we saying? What we talking? Well, we know what we talking about. Let's just get into it.
Hold on, I don't know what we talking about. Somebody bring it in.
Oh, you know.
Is there something important going on in the world, or
No,
I'm not aware?
Damn. I mean, that's some people's point of view.
That's some people's experience.
Yeah. I mean, are we kicking it off? Are we starting? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, let's do it
Might as
whenever you guys
well.
are ready.
Oh, all right. I'll finally do this one.
Yeah, do it.
I'm not one to kick off any of the brand beats. I don't really do that. That's typically Andrew's job. But welcome back to Brand Beats. My name is Erwin. We can go around and do the whole round table thing.
my name is JoJo.
All right.
I'm JP.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Andrew.
Glad you can join, Andrew.
Yeah, I lost my phone, so I'm feeling a little lost.
We all have been feeling lost. These past few weeks have been,
No, talk about it. Go in.
Apropos.
Yeah, I was like, we can just go right in. I mean, I think the topic is obvious. We're going to be discussing Black Lives Matter and that movement, and the movement, and I mean how it's affected us, me personally as like a Black man within this industry and within this world, how I've experienced this industry and its like reaction to me even. And how different that is even going to be from JoJo and from Andrew. And I think this is just an important conversation for us to start having. And the reason we wanted to do it on our Brand Beats and Brand Beats Live is because we don't want to just keep this conversation internally. We want to make sure that we're sharing the things that we get out of this. And again, we're not going into this with any preconceived ideas that there's going to be some solution at the end of this Brand Beats. There's never a solution at the end of a Brand Beats. It's just conversation about hard topics. Yeah, so we can just, again, you started going in, so I'm passing it to JoJo. Also, yeah, I don't think have you been on a Brand Beats?
No.
All right, so this is JoJo's first.
Welcome.
This is JoJo's first Brand Beats.
Like, I feel like this episode is gonna show why. And kick it off. Like, I think I had to reflect the past 2 hours leading up to this because I've been nervous. I've been having anxiety, and it's like anxiety over the conversations that I've been having all week, for the past week. And I'm like, why am I scared to say this on live? And again, it's kind of like this voice that's unheard. And I'm finally speaking it to the people I care about, but having this voice to opinionate how I feel to people who might not share the same sentiment, who might not give a fuck. And I'm just here to say, like, I don't give a fuck either. Like, I'm here to speak my truth. And the thing is, like, I'm hurt. And, for the past couple of years, since I've been more conscious about the society and like my position as a Black woman, I felt like I had to be quiet and I had to move on my day to day without speaking my truth, but living other people's truth. And it's been eating me up inside. And I think, especially over the weekend, since for some reason, this experience has spoken louder than previous ones, it's been very emotional for me because now I feel like I can finally cry about it. Now I feel like I can finally talk about it. And now I feel like I can actually, like, this is my opportunity to like share the platform that I felt so strongly for with people who are going to listen. And I'm going to say it's hard. It is hard. And, I don't just feel for one instance and whatever, like, I'm not going to get like too deep into, but like whatever comes out of whatever this is, I just know that the fight is just beginning, and it's with the attention that we have now and how to keep it going and how do I make an everlasting impact for my child, because I have a daughter and I want her to have the same like voice and continue this narrative. And I don't think that it should end today. I don't think that it should end tomorrow. But again, like, how do we not be tired? How do we keep fighting the good fight? And I think it starts now with this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It's like moment by moment. I would even say, like, my experience, like starting from like last Friday, I think that was the first time that I cried. Like I cry when I watch rom-coms, and that's pretty much it, which is hella cheesy. But outside of rom-coms, this was probably the first time that I like really cried. And it was like just a small tear. But then like throughout the weekend, I had like multiple times where I like broke down and I just like started crying and I didn't know what to do. Like I felt it welling up in me and just like this sense of like urgency, it was almost all of the feelings that I've ever felt as a Black man in this world. The highs, the lows, the joys, the pains, the fact that we as a Black community have always turned any of the atrocities that were laid upon us into beautiful pieces of work and art and architecture, and have contributed so much to this culture, but then the culture doesn't necessarily ever respect it or represent it. And I'm talking about like American culture doesn't respect it or represent it, even though the culture that is American is like fully Black, right? So it was like all of these like kind of mental like hurdles and jumps and mind games and puzzles that were going on in my head. And it was so much that I just like started breaking down to cry. And then even thinking about our industry, the world of creative, the world of design, this industry that is like fully free, and you get to do all of this stuff and help these brands like articulate culture and connect with culture. There was this moment of tension even there, because we don't see the representation within this industry of ourselves. Like anytime I walk into a room, I'm like probably the only Black man, Black person in that room. And
Black
I
man
always,
inspector.
I always feel like I'm like a lobbyist for culture in that moment. Like I feel like I have to be the voice of everything, which is a heavy ass strain. And luckily, like at our agency, I've been able to become a creative director. I do have a voice. I'm able to sit in the C-suite with leaders of other organizations and actually have impact and push for change. But there's still a weight. Even as you move up, there's still a weight that you now have to be more responsible to communicate more voices, to make sure that more voices are heard and more voices are represented. And I don't think, like I knew that, and I was like proud of that, so proud of that. And proud that as a Black individual, I've been able to take an empathetic approach to all of the work that I do to try and get clients to see a bigger picture and a broader narrative of like, you're a platform brand, you're not just selling product, you're trying to create a community essentially. But then this past weekend, again, there was just that moment where I was like, are we just robbing from culture to give the sauce? I think you might have said that, Jojo. You're like, we're just giving the sauce away. Like, are we just robbing from culture to give the sauce to the brands so that they can use that sauce to then sell product? And there was just like this moment and this tension and internal tension within me that like, it was just heavy. And again, I'm probably, anytime I talk, there's probably gonna be no resolution at the end of my statement or sentence, just a forewarning, just saying stuff. But that was like definitely my feeling this weekend.
Yeah, I would like, I don't think that there are answers, right? I mean, this week has been an emotional roller coaster, and I've probably had 55 conversations that just turned into therapy sessions. Where sometimes you just need to speak on things, like you just like all these things that start unpacking, because I think oddly enough, at Basic we're fortunate to have some, we have people of color that are representative in our creative leadership, which is an amazing thing. But I resonate so much with what you say, Owen, because there's been a ton of reminders this week. This is one of the positive things about the conversation that's happening today. It's like so much of what I think we do as people of color in any industry, in any line, in whatever, just in our life that we live, is learn to live with the things that aren't right, and and smile and go on, and it's all fine and it's all good. Like, what I mean? Like we all were walking around 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago, and we were okay. You know what I mean? We weren't like, and so we get these reminders of what's happening, and it's been such a reminder of like, yeah, those times in my career where I walked into a room for the first time, and among other factors about feeling like a young person who needed to convince people, like your race is always a factor when you consider those things. Like, I am a representative of a people, and I don't know what biases are in this room that I need to maybe overcome. And so I need to be a little extra buttoned up, and I need to come across a little extra prepared. and those are things you just sort of live with. You never really like sit and process. Like, and so that's been a lot of what my experience has been this week is like, I've had this sort of personal reflection on like, man, all these things that didn't affect me consciously at the time, but were there. And you recognize like how many other people deal with that, go through that. And I think that's very common in the experience that, you know, that people are bringing to light today is, yeah, there's definitely like a ton of problems and pain that falls out of it. And it's pain that we don't ever really like sit down and ever process or think about. It's pain that we just sort of stifle down, bottle up. And you see a lot of that pain is what's spilling out in people today. So it's like when things like this happen in America and we get reminded, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. You feel it so much more. It's been hard for me. It's been a busy week at work. I've been trying to like keep my head down and like keep on fucking working. And I'm like, it's the most distracting week I've been with. And I can't help but think, you know, for those of us who, and I don't want to complain, for those of us who are fortunate enough to still have jobs in the world that we're living in right now, it's still a real fucking hard time to put a smile on and skip your merry way down and walk through this meeting every day and be like, yeah, totally, like everything's fine. Like, let me just like talk about your brand and your product today, even though like really like 80% of my mind is kind of floating around spinning plates with things that I haven't dealt with, which has been why I'm like, I've been looking forward to Friday this week because I'm like, I just want to turn my brain off for a minute.
Legit, right before this call, I had to take a walk because like I feel like on the backside outside of basic, I've had my foot on the gas of like trying to figure out ways and trying to activate and trying to do things to give back and donate, etc. And it's working, but at the same time in all of that, I didn't realize how much I was like straining myself. Like I literally hit a wall like an hour ago where I had to just go lay down. Like my mind was I wake up every morning and my mind is going in 1,000 different directions. One of those directions is I can do this, create opportunities for donation as well as create opportunities for conversation. At Basic, we can now instill these programs because there's openness and there's opportunity. And then on the other side, I know I need to work on my projects. I need to create some decks. I need to like do some presentation. And it's like, one, at Basic, you and I as like creative directors were always, and hold on, what is it? You're above creative director, but you and I, yeah.
I'm I think it's custodial services is my job title.
But you and I, like, we're going in back-to-back meetings, and we've always actually talked about my brain is like the mental shift. What is that called?
Yeah, context switching.
The context switching. Yeah. Sorry for anybody who's listening. I know that word usually, but context switching. And so like there's the code switching that you have to do as a Black man and a Black person in America when you're talking to different groups. Like you said, Andrew, every time we go into a room, there's this like almost this like foreign language translator tool in our head where we're like, what are their bias? How do I actually approach their bias? And we do this unconsciously. We do this just naturally to like fit in with whatever's going on so we don't scare people with the things that we say. And then on top of that, there's the context switching of meeting, then going into thinking about my people and the pain and the struggle, then going into like seeing a cop pushing over an old man, him busting his head on the sidewalk, and then going back into a meeting saying like, your brand is dope. We're gonna build something.
But if I can just kind of switch the narrative just a little bit, especially relating to you two. I moved to San Diego from New York, and I chose San Diego because of Basic. Like when I was thinking of like moving back to California, I was like, well, I already been in the Bay, like Bay's like overrated, overpriced. And I was like, well, let me look at San Diego. I found all these agencies that I wasn't really excited of. And then I found Basic and I was like, oh, like the CEO is Black. There's 2 Black creative directors. I come from New York. You know what I mean? When there's just an array of ethnicities and like I've seen women creative directors, but I've never seen Black creative directors. You know what I mean? And like you guys are on the website and like the content that I've seen felt very like cultured. And that's what it's like made me excited to jump on a phone call. That's what made me excited to jump down here and like join the team. And I feel like I'm not the only person that feels this way. So I hear the sentiment of you guys saying like, well, I'm about to step into this room as a Black man and like, I kind of have to change my tone of voice. And that's where like, I even have my own struggles, is because I know who I am as an individual. And I feel like people look at me as an individual, but like, no, they look at me as because I'm this Black woman who actually like carries herself in this way that everyone can relate. And it's just because I'm this Black woman. And I was so excited to meet you two specifically because I'm like, you're doing shit that people aren't. There's not many of you guys out here. And I remember like, Erwin, we had this conversation when it's like, people can just look you up and find you because you were a Black creative director in San Diego. And I knew that when I came down here that like, I was gonna have the community and the outreach that I had in Atlanta, Chicago, the Bay even, or New York, but I knew I had you guys. And I think that's something that we don't highlight enough and we don't celebrate and we don't uplift you two specifically, because that changes a lot of shit. That changes the narrative. That's the reason why people come to us, because of our culture. And it's not because of what we say, it's actually because of what we see. We see y'all running shit. And, you know, and that's why I feel so strongly about you two and about the things that we do here. And that's why I feel so strongly about the shit that we create. It's like, we embody ourselves into the work, whether we believe it or not, whatever, like, even though it might get construed at some point in the story, like we still put ourselves in there, but how are you proud of it? How are you carrying it? How does it like sentiment outside of just what we're showing these fucking like, sorry, not fucking, but how we show like our clients work, you know, but seriously, like it's our shit. It's our shit. And you guys lead that shit. And that's kind of where I'm like, I think we should feel more empowered and inspired to authentically be ourselves, no matter where we are. That's just sorry.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, I totally agree with you. You're right. I don't think we necessarily like tout that, you know, as a rationale or anything behind things. And you're right. Like it's something we should be proud of. I think we are proud of it. And I am proud of it. I think maybe it's a little bit in our nature to be, speak softly about things, right? You know, like where diversity has been an important, I mean, like Matt himself, right? Founder of our company, a mixed individual like myself, like Owen, multicultural, whatever. Like it's been in our nature to be, let the work speak for us, and without calling those things out. And we want, you know, we want the accolades and the credit to go to, I think like we can be a testament of what can come from somebody, from a company or a culture that embraces diversity and leans into it. But you're right, like we need to tell that story too at the same time. You know, it's important to make sure that like we find ways to tell that story. That, you know, there are just times that it's this happens to be a time that's more important than ever. But I think it's been in our nature to let the work be a testament to what can be done when you operate the way that I think that our company tries to operate, or with some of the ideals from a diversity perspective that like maybe Matt naturally has instilled into our culture, you know, but it's been very natural, you know, because I think because of who's really founded our company, because of the collective that we've created together. And it's like really inspiring to hear that perspective coming in, where you're like, this is an opportunity to work in a place that's never, or an opportunity to work in a place that's like never really been presented with you or to you. And that's amazing. And I actually like, it's awesome to hear that. Like, I want to celebrate that, you know, because when you're on the inside, I think it's less obvious.
And I was going to say, I think there's always, at least for me, and this is just speaking personally, when I was like coming out of school, there was literally just Black agencies, and then there was like your other agencies, right? Black agencies worked on Black campaigns and that targeted Black people. And then everybody else got to like work on every other campaign. And those Black campaigns, you would see them on BET, and that's it. And it's like,
that's right.
I think for me, I actually took pride in the fact that we didn't tout ourselves as a Black agency, because we didn't have to fall into that like that silo. But then that is even in itself, that statement. And that was one of the things I realized like a while ago, not just this past week, but even that statement and even the fact that I had that feeling speaks to the systemic issue within our industry. That if you say you're a Black agency, then now Black owned agency, then now people are gonna think you can only do Black work. It's like people feel like as Black people, we can only touch and hit on Black things. Whereas to me, it's always been the opposite way. As Black people, we had to learn other people's history before ours. Like I learned my history in my house. I didn't learn it in school, right? And so we are actually, and it's not to say other people aren't empathetic, but it's like we are naturally, not naturally, but we're forced to be empathetic throughout the education system. And so we can tell other people's stories. We can understand other people's stories and we can share in other people's stories. And so it was always weird to me that Black owned agencies were always like, you do Black work and that's it. When we have this deeper, richer narrative that touches on everybody, right? Like even if you look at mass culture as a whole, what is hip hop? What is rock? What is jazz? What is blues? What are all of these things that we consider culture that everybody loves that might not on the surface now be Black? Like it's all rooted in a culture that was created by my ancestors and my people. So it was always weird. There was always, again, there's like this tension, constant tension as being like a Black creator. And I'm sure it's even worse in other industries. Like we do work in a little bit more of a free industry. Like probably other industries can't have this conversation sponsored by the agency or the company, but it's like we are able to, and still within this industry, there's that tension. But I do think like as we move forward, like we basically entered into a perfect storm where you have COVID, you can't run from this story, you can't run from it. You can't just relegate it to a weekend and then go like, that's over. We can move back into the week and go to restaurants and go to bars and go to the beach and now we can chill and now we don't have to think about it. It's like you have no choice but to see it and think about it. And I was telling this to JoJo. When I think about no justice, no peace, I don't just think about peace in the sense of rioting and protesting. Like that's one side. But I think about no peace is no mental peace for those who choose to and would have ignored it. That to me is what this time is about. How do you continue and create no space for people to hide? That way they have no choice but to deal with the realities of the formation and foundation of America. And once you deal with that, then we can begin to move forward. Until then, this issue is gonna keep on happening, keep on happening. And right now with the perfect storm of like multiple incidences leading up, and then you have COVID, and then next month you have like the biggest hurricane season. Like it's the perfect storm for
super volcanoes.
Yeah, it's the perfect storm for like real change. Like people are fed up with just the world as a whole, and it's now like I was actually scared. So I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but I was actually scared that we were going to come out of COVID more divided, because you had people in digital silos being talked to by their algorithms and not interacting with each other. So then you had people complaining that they can't surf at the same time as people were complaining about they can't work, so they're going to lose their housing. And if they stay in their housing, they're actually going to come out of this with more debt than they ever had in their life, and then they're going to be homeless. Like you had those two conversations. And so I was like, okay, we're just going to come out of COVID like even worse, even more divided, even more siloed, etc. With this, we've all created, there's a unifying thing that we can all stand behind. At least most of us can stand behind, most of us can believe in. Whether you agree with the looting and the rioting, that's like literally beside the point. This is about individuals' lives who have been lost.
Yeah.
Not just George, but like literally since slavery, individual lives that have been lost, that have
Since
been
George, like
that have been stopped, that have been dreams that have been squashed because of the color of somebody's skin. And it's like, this is right now, because the world is watching. I'm like a creative optimist, so I think that there will be change, because the world is really watching and everybody else has to watch.
Yeah.
And even with like Selma, change happened when they marched over the bridge, and then they got like multiple racists were getting beaten. And then that touched people's hearts. And then that spurred change. To me, this is that same moment. Like, we're seeing people, if you don't like Black people, you're seeing like old white men getting pushed over and busting their head on the concrete. Like, do you agree with that? Like, even if you don't like Black people, like, do you agree with that? And now we can begin to like unpack and like unlock and start to tear down these like stupid ass ideas you got.
I mean, there's a lot. You're saying a lot of things. Like you're mentioning that there's a lot of ugliness in our society today that's rearing its head that deal with like a ton of different matters. You know, like you mentioned, you know, things going on that are spilling out of this. Like, one thing that you were just touching on that I think is amazing and compelling and inspiring to me, and why, like, I'm just like you are. I'm an optimist. Like, we're sort of living through, you know, a civil rights movement of our own, and we're seeing it sort of manifest in a different way, and that's a good thing. You know, I think these are things that we're not saying them for the first time. This isn't the first time these subjects have been brought up. It's finally got volume. And I don't, whatever the circumstances that brought it to light, sad, difficult, tough, we have a ton of martyrs, frankly, like people who made sacrifices in their lives to turn the volume up on one stark problem and many subtle problems that are going on in our culture or our society. And because of that, I'm like, this is an inspiring time, right? People are coming together to say, these are things that are important to us as an American, beyond, you know, everything else. Like, this is important. And that's the inspiring thing, is to see that there are more people that value and are gaining perspective or trying to. And those things can be frustrating and hard to deal with too, you know, as other people learn, change, all that shit's really hard, you know. But I think the important part is like us coming together as a society and thinking, okay, what's the next step? And it's gonna be painful. We're in the fucking messy middle of it. We don't know, there's no fucking clean cut answers. Everything's hard. What are we gonna do now?
For me, it's like we can be optimistic and we can kind of be excited about being heard. And in some ways, I guess I am. And speaking to a lot of conversations that I had this week, I'm not. And I'm just like, for me, it's like, I'm not going to get my hopes up. You know what I mean? I have an audience. I have this outreach of people. I mean, we have 2 people in this group now that I know support me and like has my back. But there's this whole like group of folks that I know I can't reach. I know you guys can't touch, even like the other people in this room that we can't touch. And it's like, I understand, like, a lot of people don't think that violence is the answer. And for the longest time we've tried, even now we're trying to be peaceful, and I'm not condoning violence, but it's like, at some point these conversations have to escalate to the next level. And even in me having conversations, hard conversations with, you know, the white people that I know, or people of color, other people of color that I've known, I've watered down my tone. And you guys have even mentioned this too. It's like, I've watered down my tone because I've been conditioned to appease my audience. I know how to talk to you guys, but do you guys know how to talk to us? No, fuck no. You guys don't know how to talk to us. And it's like, I have to, one, water down my tone, but in the same tone, teach you how to talk to me, how to respond to me, how to talk to, I have to like rewrite your own narrative, reorganize your like mentality. And kind of, I'm jumping all over the place, but I received this question because, again, once all this happened, I finally had a moment where I felt like, fuck, like, I'm torn, I'm broken, I need to sit down, I need to relax, I need to like I need to cry about it. And then I just saw this chaos happening in my circle, and I'm like, I ain't teach y'all shit. I can't sit down, I can't close my eyes. Like, I thought that me personally have made such an impact on you that I can allow you to take the narrative and go forward. but I can't. There's still a lot of tone deaf there's still a lot of tone deaf people out there. There's a lot of people that don't understand. I'm sending you material to read. I'm posting shit on Instagram for you to dissect, and you're not. And I received this question where just like, why don't you feel like I can talk to you? Why can't I ask you like questions as a Black woman? And I had to be like, do you know my journey? Do you know Andrew's journey? Do you know Erwin's journey? It's like, we don't have the same journey. I went to public school, and the only thing I learned about was Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. I had no idea about the Black Wall Street. I had no idea that the Black Panther movement was actually a movement to support and protect their community. I thought that they were just fucking killing police for no reason. I was like, that's all the shit that I had to go out and learn. I had to learn myself. Marcus Garvey, I didn't even hear about him. I had no clue who the fuck he was until I moved to New York. And that was not that long ago. And you want me to have a conversation with you in an hour, 5 minutes, and explain to you why you need to feel this way, how you need to feel passionate about me, how you need to support me. And we've been friends for X amount of years. And don't get me wrong, like I've had a lot of friends who have just been like, oh, like I'm having these conversations with my parents, or like I'm having these conversations with X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I'm crying, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. Like I'm getting told like, I'm a Black lover and all this other stuff. And I'm just being PG about it. And I'm just like, yeah, but I do this shit every day and I eat that shit. I eat it. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it sucks, but that actually became my everyday. That became my reality. I wear this necklace that says Black excellence. And I remember the first time I even came to work around people of color, I felt I was nervous. And I was like, bitch, for what? Sorry, but like for what? Like you are who you are, and like be proud. And I feel like again, like this is just the fucking beginning. This is not even a tip. This is just the soft PG version of what we're going to. If we want to inflict change, it has to continue. And I talked to you, Erwin. I was like, today is probably going to be the end of a lot of people's like awareness of what's going on, and that's the reality. Starting on Monday, it's a new work week. You know what I mean? Like, oh, the 4 police officers are in jail right now. You know what I mean? Like, oh, victory. But it's like, no, since those 4 police have been locked up, we're still getting murdered out here. We're still for peaceful protesting. I hear the optimism, but I can't be optimistic because it's like the propaganda of seeing the police drop to one knee and be on our side 1 minute, but the next minute they're knocking over people who are trying to defend us. I'm not comfortable with being satisfied at this moment. And if I am, it's not gonna, like, if I become satisfied, I'm gonna fall off just like everyone else.
I agree with that 100%. And I think even when I say optimism, I'm approaching optimism the same way our Black ancestors have, which is like, I believe that there will be change the same way Martin Luther King believed that there will be change and Malcolm X believed that there will be change. But I know that the work isn't done. Like this week does not mean the end of work at all. And I think it's gonna get harder. It's gonna get tougher because we're gonna lose this worldwide momentum. But we're gonna have to, like, now that we have woken up, and not in the trendy term of being woke, but now that we have woken up, and it's like woken up a certain fire, like to me, it's gonna be about us encouraging one another, even like our allies, like not just our Black brothers and sisters, but our allies, the people who stand with us, encouraging all of us to continuously fight this fight to dismantle racism and white supremacy. Like that's what this is about. And to even just be able to say Black Lives Matter boldly and not be afraid to say Black. Like that's also just a thing. Like I think for me, this week has been like a definitely a week of growth. And like me being able to share things that I always think, me being able to like, just share thoughts and feelings that I always have thought and that I always think, and just like say it proudly, say it loudly. This has been for me an empowering week, exhausting week for sure. But again, those are those 2 lanes that we have always lived in. There's this exhausting side, but then there's this other side that is beauty through the adversity. And I think that's what I'll always like love about being Black, is that there's beauty through adversity in all things that we do. Like when you see the people like crumping against the cops, Like they don't know what the fuck is going on. They just see people like spazzing out, but then these individuals are dancing and expressing themselves through dance. Or when you saw the people doing the Cupid shuffle, like that to me is the beauty. We are in this moment where we are in pain and hurting, but on top of fighting, we know how to laugh, we know how to enjoy each other, we know how to be together, we know how to love, we know how to care, we know how to create. Like, and we live in both of those worlds simultaneously, like all of the time. And so, yeah, when I say optimistic, I'm optimistic because I'm going to fight and I'm going to force change. And I think everything has continuously led to this moment, at least in my life. All of my experiences, even if it's like with Crafted and like having to listen to and be involved in hard conversations with Crafted, doing Brandbeats and like actually getting a platform to speak. And now it's like, now I can use everything that I've ever learned to now continue to push forward in my lane. And I like that there was like a post that said like, this protest and this movement has many lanes. You don't have to occupy all of them. You don't have to be out there protesting. If you're scared of like COVID and the fact that the tear gas is going to like mess up your fucking like system, like you don't have to go out there and protest, but do something.
Yeah.
Either speak to somebody, educate somebody. And even though educating people is exhausting, and I'm not saying everybody has to do it, I'm willing to do it because I know that if you're more open right now, I'm going to have a book for you, because I don't want you just to learn about only the broad picture of systemic racism from like slavery till now. I want you to like dig into specifics. I want you to understand algorithms and how that basically creates digital redlining. I want you to understand what redlining is and how that divided cities to create the oppression that we have now, or the lack of wealth that we have within our communities. I want people to dig deep into like actual things, not just like take a wide view and they're like, yeah, I understand Black problems now, you know, I can reference this. I don't want people acting. I want actual action and like change here.
I mean, like to your point, like we actually, and I was kind of conflicted, and I actually had a sideline conversation with Eric, and he was like, you know, I think this conversation, this topic is important, but it's our voices. And we do have someone like JP who does have white privilege. And I was conflicted at first, and I was like, he should be listening. But I also feel like you have an audience that you can relate to and that you can touch to that I can't. And you know, when we talk about like being an ally, I think it's important for you to also express to like our audience, your own personal audience, people who like are even acquaintance, like what are you doing to kind of support us?
I'll just say that I think this Brandbeats was actually spurred by our marketing meeting on Monday when JP was actually talking. And I was like, we need to fucking get on a Brandbeats because we need to talk on some shit. Like,
yeah.
State of affairs.
I think through all of this, I mean, it's not my place to jump in and talk, and I just have been listening. I think one thing that I was going to do is, that I wanted to do at the end of this was open myself up to any questions that you guys might have of shit that like there's a ton of stuff that is inherently taught to white people, white men, white kids growing up, that like it's all, whether it's conscious or subconscious, there's things that like we go around and we like, you know, as a young boy, you walk around and there's like inherent biases that you have and things like that. And I'm game to talk about any of that. The talk about redlining is interesting, and not to jump in, if you guys have other things to say, by all means do it. But you know, I think there's a ton going on, and it might sound like it's falling on deaf ears. However, I think the most powerful thing about this time is that the work isn't going unnoticed, and it's not falling on deaf ears, and it's probably the instance of the most amplification we have ever had. And like the reach is so incredible. And I think I guess it's not my place to encourage anything, but I will say that like we are hearing you. And I think there's a story back, you know, I'm from St. Louis, so lived Ferguson. That was like an incredibly eye-opening experience for me. my biases, I absolutely had them growing up. I have them now, and there's things that like I will never fix, and there's things that I will continue to grow and learn from. But at the beginning of Ferguson, you know, I saw it all, and it was hitting so close to home, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. I definitely fell on, I hated what happened, but I just couldn't understand what was going on after the fact. It was very loud. It was very different to me. I'd never seen it, and I didn't really know what to expect. And I definitely, I said stupid shit that is not, there's far worse, but I said a bunch of dumb shit, and someone called me out on it. And sometime this week, there's a guy who I follow on Twitter. I've never fucking met this person. He checked me on it. We had some dialogue. Every time I see that man's face or name in my Twitter feed, I think about the dialogue that we have and how it changed me forever. And a couple days ago, I hit him up and I was like, bro, like back whenever all this happened, I was ignorant. I had privilege, still do. And I think saying like I have privilege and admitting it is awesome, but I also don't want it to become cliche and just fucking easy to say, because it's not easy to say. And it's like, that shit is real. And I was like, you know, I came from it. It wasn't from my soul. It was 100% ignorance. And I think that's also like being able to understand that side of it, and that, you know, people like to throw around like it's okay to accept this and X, Y, and Z. I think you also have to understand where you're coming from. And like I didn't feel it. I just had no idea what I knew and what I didn't know. And he checked me on it, and I basically just said, you having that dialogue with me changed me for the rest of my life. And every time I see you, I am like reminded of that. And I just wanted to say that, like, because he had just tweeted about how he was fucking tired of doing this. And I was like, bro, all I'm saying is like, someone's going to hear you. Like, you fucking changed me. We're doing this again 6 years later, but I'm on the right side of this, and I'm not alone. And there's a million of other people who are hearing that. And I think, you know, it's fucked, but we'll go through it again. But I think that there's going to be something that, you know, there's going to be a bunch of other people who are on the other side of it. And so I think that's, I don't know. How do you say like, keep going, you're fucking tired. This is a 400-year fight. That's not like, I can't say that, but all I'm saying is, people, I think that I am encouraged by the amount of people that I have seen that are pretending to hear, and like pretending, because it's not fucking like, it could be turned off on Monday, or a year from now it can be continuous. And I think we'll have to wait and find out. But that is something that like I have felt for myself, and that I think that there is the possibility of.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, JP, if I can challenge you, and like, my question to you, and even to this agency, I was like, you know, this week, I just want you guys to educate yourselves. And I'm just curious of like how much you've actually educated yourself, and actually how much education did I have to provide for you. And when I say I mean like Black individuals, because this is where my frustration lies, is like, I feel like this should have been the time for us to kind of sit down and dissect and like heal and like relate to what's going on, and try to find my own position, and like, you know what I mean? Like have dialogue with my loved ones. But instead I feel like most of my power, much of me feeling like I'm being in charge, is because I have the responsibility to educate you guys. And again, like, I'm just curious, like, are you actually outsourcing and like figuring it out, or is it these one-on-one conversations? Because I will continue to do what I'm doing. Erwin and Andrew continue to do what I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just speaking on the behalf of a lot of other people. Is it our duty to educate you guys?
No.
Versus like finding articles? Because I want you to learn. And if you're not going to learn because I'm sending you material and it actually has to come from me, I'm going to do that. People might, but I will. And I just want to know personally how you, and even Eric, because you haven't spoken up yet, but like, how do you guys feel?
Yeah.
It's absolutely not your duty to do anything. I mean, outsourcing and going and doing your own research and doing and like seeking it out. But I mean, you showing me things isn't what's going to make people do that. And so I think like the conversations that I'm having with you that are organic and real are always going to shape you. The same thing with the note that the anecdote that I told earlier, that that like wasn't someone seeking, that was someone pissed off at me and checking my ass. And that was like an organic learning opportunity. And I think like those are always going to be powerful and probably the most powerful. I mean, me reading something on Wikipedia or in some sort of book that I can find, because it's not a textbook, is going to be like, sure, but it's not going to have the story behind it. And I think so. I think also I agree with you, or like there is an issue with the amplification and that like shit is a shareable. And so I think like that's a lot of work. And I would say if you're asking what works, a real conversation works, but that's also not your duty. And I think I would also say that like that's for people to fucking seek out themselves if they want to. Yeah, I mean, I can't give you the answers because there is no answer. There's a reality that
it's not going to spark change if you're not hearing it from someone you care about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's not okay. It's not like the ideal situation in that we are in this where like you have to have one-on-one conversations to do that. But I will say that is I think that is the where the effort is the most impactful. I also think, oh, go ahead, everyone. I keep cutting you off.
I was going to say, even you mentioned that, I didn't even think about that, just because as a Black person, I just feel like I'm always going to fight. And I posted it on my like Instagram. It's like, I'm going to keep fighting because I'm Black. I have no choice, right? And I didn't even realize that until you said this. And I've seen these posts like throughout the week. Like,
we should have a choice.
I didn't realize it till right now that it's like, I don't have the luxury and I don't have the privilege to mourn and to rest at all. Like I have to, and I'm not complaining. It sucks, but at the same time, because people's ears are open, I will talk. I will share. Like, let's have a conversation, because if you're open, I also don't want you to then shrink back, because if you're a non-Black person, I don't want you to shrink back and not ask, and then that's a missed opportunity for actual growth. Because even like with Google and with all these things, because I was actually like doing research earlier today, and I was like, oh shit, there's a shit ton of resources, but I don't know which resource to go to, and then you can end up in an alt-right resource and then get some misinformation as well. Or you can start looking at data and stats, and data and stats are misleading as fuck because they're not our data and stats. They weren't.
I know you saw the shit that I posted about Prada. I know you saw it.
Oh no, I just
or like, not Prada, but like one company, they're like, oh, Black people looted this like eyeglass wear.
That too. Yeah. Exactly. But I'm saying I'm saying when you begin to, a lot of people reference data and stats of murder, right? Yeah. But it doesn't take into account the people who maybe didn't get convicted, or maybe it just got glossed over because we aren't writing the history, or it just didn't get reported, and all of this stuff. Like, data and stats are misleading because it takes the human element out of it. And if anybody wants to read about that, read Weapons of Mass Destruction. Again, Weapons of Mass Destruction. It like goes into all of these different industries, touches on over-policing, touches on education, and how data and the reliance on data and the pushing of all decisions to algorithms has essentially caused a lot of harm within those spaces, because it takes the human factor out of it, and it allows us to place blame on this like thing that we can't really understand. But with that said, for me, I think that's why I do still feel, and even though I'm exhausted, I will share, I will talk, I will like have conversation. It's not my duty and I don't have to, but I don't want this time to go unseen, or I don't want this time to like, I don't want
wasted.
I don't want people who are slightly open to just like slip through the fucking like cracks because they were nervous to say something.
Yep.
Like, that's what I don't want. I want this to be like, this has changed because I'm here and there's other people here who are going to push through, and I'm going to put myself on the line and like put my stress and whatever, and I'll continue to hold it because my ancestors held it. Like my ancestors like built this country on their backs and gave others wealth. And I'm going to like, and I think that's also, it also is hard. Like that's my comparison. My comparison to like a good life is like, I have it good because my ancestors were whipped. They were lynched. They were chased down by the Ku Klux Klan. Like whatever struggles I have aren't anything in comparison to what they have. And that gives me a certain level of strength to say, I will push through and I will take on that weight. Like I'm going to rest after this fucking call for sure. But like, next week, like Sunday, I'm going.
Erwin and Andrew, like you guys, I've heard you both say like you kind of been this therapist, and that was my kind of question to like JP, and even to the people that I care about. Is like during this time, we've kind of become this therapist to people. A lot of white people in particular have cried to me, and at first, like I was kind of crying because I was like, oh, you know, you've been such this good person to me, and like I know that you know, initially, like I know you deep down love me and you support me, and like it's this place where we are victimized, but we have to be the support at the same time. And this goes back to even talking about you guys referring back to your clients and like the things that you do, like being artists. And I went to art school. And the reason why I'm not an artist to this day, or I don't classify myself as an artist, is because they tried to manipulate me to wrap my art around to the client, to someone else. It wasn't something that I felt anymore. What I did in college was because I said, fuck it, I'm gonna let my emotions come out and just do my fucking work. And once I got out of school, the reality was I can't make money off of this. I can't profit off of this. And right now, the reality is like, we can't be sad. We can't be hopeless. We can't feel like, you know, we don't have the problem saying like change might not come, because the reality is change might not come. We have to be optimistic always. And I'm bringing it back to just like, what are you two doing? Because I had to look at that to myself. It's like, I'm crying and I have my brother, I have my dad, I have my mom. Like, what am I doing to heal, even though it's not directly affecting myself? And I'm affected more that my people, someone I've never even met, is being gunned down in the street. I still have my daughter, you know what I mean? Like, what are you guys doing? And Andrew, I turn to you because you even say you have a therapist and that you've kind of been distracted. And it's like, when do you unlayer all this shit? When do you unlayer appeasing to other people, taking care of other people, taking care of like work that isn't solely like your heart? You know what I mean? Like, when do you touch this?
For sure. No, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, like a little bit of it is rooted in some of what Erwin was saying. Like, I do feel it. I feel you're right. It's not our duty to respond, but I think a lot of it, if you look back and you channel what somebody like Martin Luther King did, like they rose to the occasion of, I don't have to meet you halfway. All these people, I don't have to change your mind. It shouldn't be my responsibility to make you do the right thing and recognize what's good and learn and educate yourself. And it shouldn't be. But the reason Martin Luther King was powerful is because even though he didn't need to do that, he did. And he went out there and spoke with people and met them halfway. And when they were open, like Erwin was saying, they opened that crack, he helped pull them through it. Now, that's not my responsibility. And you're right, that is not my responsibility. But if I can change one mind or two or three, I've done a little bit of my own part. And so I'm willing to have those conversations with people, many people. I owe it to myself as an individual to give myself the space to be angry, to give myself the space to have pain, to give myself the space to say, I don't have to do this right now. And I'm not responsible to every person that reaches out to me to educate them. Like it's not on me to do it. Like you're absolutely right. It isn't on each of us to do it. And if we are going through too much pain, I think that what our duty is to do what we can. And what we can do is different for each and every single one of us, because some of us are affected in different ways by this for every reason, because Erwin's experience is different than your experience. I said it like 3 or 4 times this week. You know, people were even saying, hey, I want to hear, like, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from Erwin. And I was like, I can't speak for JoJo.
Yeah.
I'm not JoJo's representative. My experience is Andrew Giannis's experience in this fucking country. And yes, I've dealt with all the shit that is at the forefront today. Dealt with all of it in many ways for years and years and years. But it's still my own experience, and it's only my opinion. And the way and the pain that I have is my pain, and JoJo's pain is different. And so like, when I say what our duty is to just do what we can to make things better, like you said, for your daughter. And maybe that takes a little bit of sacrifice, and yeah, that's going to be very hard. And for some people, that's going to be like, I need to do nothing. You know what I need to do? My duty is to get through this without losing my fucking mind. That's fine. That's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, my duty is to get through this without fucking choking somebody out. Fine. That's okay. Because there'll be some other people who can do, who are stepping up, but we see it every day. We see people who are out there in all these marches and these peaceful protests, and they stand up in those crowds and they speak to all of these people who are there to support this message. And a lot of those people are black, brown, white, fucking every color under the rainbow. And they're doing a little bit of what they can to pull somebody, even if they only opened up 5%, to pull them that other 90. And I think that's amazing, but it isn't their duty. It's duty isn't what we celebrate. We don't celebrate people for doing the shit that they were supposed to do. We celebrate people for doing the shit that was extra. We celebrate the people who went and they took that next step. And that's the shit that you write home about, and you tell your kids about, is like, this person, despite everything that they had, they went the extra distance. They didn't meet that person halfway. They went 99% and pulled those motherfuckers to where they need to be. And those are the people that you want to be proud of and you want to be celebrated. So it's okay. It's all necessary. It takes every single one of us going through our own experience. And you're right. You're right. It is not our duty, but it is something that you should do what you can. You should do what you can.
Yeah, right. Definitely, like, my goal with this podcast was to, first and foremost, just listen, but I think I do owe JoJo an answer, as far as, like, what have I been doing personally, and, like, just steps I'm taking. And I think kind of what I've been wrestling with in my mind has, like, a two-pronged approach, right? So I've been thinking about it in terms of, like, both my collective identity and experience and my personal identity. So I think first and foremost, like, collectively, as an Asian American, like, I literally would not be here if not for the civil rights movement, right? Like, the Immigration and Nationality Act of '65. Like, I just point blank wouldn't be here, and and my friends are Asian, and a lot of, like, I grew up in an Asian town, right? So within the Asian American community, and this doesn't get talked about a lot, but there is a lot of anti-Blackness, like, straight up just, like, racism. And when I was growing up, there'd be a lot of kids that would just, like, throw out the N-word casually, like, so cavalier, and that would wear streetwear and listen to rap. It's like, and even, like, within, the older generations, like our grandparents, our parents, our aunts and uncles, just so much racism that we don't even confront. So I think my whole mind these past, 2 weeks, but, pretty much my whole life has been, like, wrestling with that. And I think even just personally, like, I've not lived the Black experience. So, coming up in this industry as a creative, I've definitely, I can't say I've experienced, like, prejudice, and I can't say that I've been turned down for an interview or anything because of the color of my skin. Like, I'm very privileged in that sense. So it's a means of recognizing that. And to answer your question, JoJo, like, very directly, no, like, it's not your responsibility. We've had this conversation for 400 years. And I think the time for, looking at an article, like, we're not going to learn that in 20 minutes, right? And I think it takes being very proactive and being like intentional about it. Like you don't have a responsibility to hold space for us. Like it's the other way around. Like our responsibility now is to hold space for you, right? Where we're taking the baton and we're really championing you all, because again, like we wouldn't be here if not for the civil rights movement, of like the work of Black activists, Black leaders. So yeah, I mean, and sorry, my thoughts are like all over the place, but just a lot of things I've been thinking about. Yeah, I mean, so much just to like wrestle with. But I think what I've been doing is like checking my friends and family. Like for the first time ever, we're actually having a conversation about race, you know, and a lot of it gets swept under the rug. And that's just like an Asian culture thing. Is like we don't talk about these things. But I think like it's at least encouraging for me to see my friends finally speaking up who have been so silent in the past. And that includes me as well. You know, like I've yeah, go ahead.
But to your point, it was like we haven't really addressed or even talked about it. And it's going to be a whole nother conversation. It's like color versus color, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and not even color versus like Asian American versus African American. It's like Black on Black, from African to African American, from African American to African, like dark skin and light skin. It's just like this whole conversation that we haven't even like tiptoed on yet. And why I thought it was important that you were being here and like that you spoke your like sentiment, it's because at the moment that I thought that I was weak, the moment that I wanted to give up, I was actually inspired by an Asian American that we work with. She stood up for me and like she said things that I didn't even know I felt. And that's what I'm saying. It's like the system has like literally leveled me out to the point where like I can be like Black excellence and I can be this Black forward like thinking person, but like am I really? Like what impact am I really having besides being like this person of color being sassy or like occasionally throwing jabs and just saying what I want to say, but like I'm not really. And for this person, this Asian American, and I know like we were talking about like the Asian American versus like the African American and like how we've kind of been pinned against each other, but we've had the same, similar, not the same, but similar experiences, and how much like I appreciate people of color standing up for us in that way, because you don't have to, because you have your own issues going on. Because, you know, the Latina community, you guys are still, you got like the Latina community is still battling us. The Latino community is still battling us. And it's like, why? It's because we've been placed here to like kind of be against each other. But the moments that we can come together, the moments where I'm like, my issues is big and it's important, but it's not as important. It's like how you feel too. You know what I mean? The shit that you've gone through. And I think you've done a good job of not expressing the shit that you've gone through. And I appreciate that. But, you know, there's things that we've gone through collectively that can actually help us build, to help us help the white people or like people of privilege understand what we've gone through. And it's even in our own community, even in the Black community, we have this thing where it's like, we have all these silo groups. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing, right? We're all trying to have a function. We're all trying to educate. We're all trying to uplift, but we're all doing it in different places. And when we try to come together, it's a conflict. And it's like, it shouldn't be that hard. But you know what I mean? Like our bus is going to keep moving and we got to keep circling around to pick up people. And again, I don't think we're going to answer it on this call, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that we all are systematically oppressed, and we need to figure out what that looks like. We need none of this shit. I can't fucking feel optimistic until we actually have a common ground. And that's how I personally feel. We can win victory over white people, like going to jail for 40 years for killing us. You know what I mean? I can feel a small feat for that, but the shit's going to continue until we have a voice, and our voice is heard within our community, until you respect my voice, until you understand my voice, until I understand your voice. And you know what I mean? Like we don't have to be one person that's bigger than the other, but like we actually can come together, and it's going to take a long time. But I do appreciate your insight, and the GP, I appreciate your insight too, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm not optimistic until shit comes together.
I agree with that. And I would say like, I really, and we just talked about this, JoJo, I really don't want acting, because I feel like them going away is acting. Like it's good, but it's acting like it can just be used as like a way to get everybody to quiet down. And what I want is systemic anti-racism. I wanted that to be something that changes our society. Again, this is not like a next week thing. This is not a week after thing. Like systemic racism wasn't built in a day. It was built over time and subtly got integrated into our society in all facets to influence the thoughts and minds of Black people and people of color at large. And to me, now is that shift or that opportunity where it's like, how do we start implementing systemic anti-racism in subtle and not subtle ways within organizations? How do people of color and Black people start implementing programs and systems that might not be seen by others, but it's having an impact and having effect in changing the minds and imbuing empathy into people so that they can not only just act on things. Like you brought up a really good point, Jojo, or I'm not even just going to use your example. I'm just going to, like with Black women in their hair, right? Like somebody walk up and say something like stupid as fuck, like, I liked your hair when it was like straight. I liked your hair when it was a ponytail. Us just getting them not to say that is not the answer. Right? Because then they're still thinking it, and now they're just going to think it, and they're going to speak it to other people, and it's going to be swept under the rug. And the issue with America is that we have literally swept everything underneath the rug, and now that rug has a big old like bump in it, and people keep trying to stamp it out, but that bump ain't going nowhere. Like it's just a bump of dirt that's just underneath your nice little rug. Yeah. And now it's like time to like lift up that rug. That's why it's, to me, it is like, this is an ugly moment, because we're lifting up that rug and pulling out all of that dirt. And it's until we get all of that dirt out and actually implement systemic anti-racism, like that to me is like, that is the change. And again, the answer is not simple, because systemic things are not simple to do, but it's us looking at systems, and white people looking at systems, and Asian people looking at systems, in order to make sure that over time, people's minds are shifted and changed. Very similar to like with you, JP, it was one conversation. With somebody else, it could be one movie they see. With somebody else, it can be one other thing they see. How do we create that? And again, as like brand people and advertising people, we know that if you show people things enough times, they're going to believe it, they're going to think it, they're going to like apply it to who they are. There's like this inherent, or there's this ability. And again, I would not say that it's our responsibility, but there is an ability that we have and a knowledge that we have of how people function and how people work in social psychology and advertising to create things for positive change in our personal lives, in our work lives. Even just think about user experience outside of the digital space. It's like user experience is about creating little moments of achievement so that people can get to larger and larger and larger and larger moments of like success, right? Like gamification. We apply gamification every fucking day to websites. How do we apply gamification and game theory to getting people to see us as more than 3/5 of a person?
Yeah,
and
right. You're right.
Youth. And again, it's not a responsibility, but
it's our responsibility.
That's it. But I think the point you're making, like, it is. I think our responsibility isn't. We're not here to solve every problem, but we're here to take the next step. Like, how do you take it from? I mean, that's what they did in the civil rights movement. Like, a decade or two after the civil rights movement happened, I sure as shit would rather live today than I would have wanted to live at that time. And so they didn't solve the problem, but they took the next step. And I think right now we have a huge opportunity as a culture and as a society to do what we can to help us take the next step, whatever that looks like. Because you're right, and you're right, Jojo, like, you don't feel optimistic because we've got a long history of like, yeah, there's been a lot of attention. This, like I said, this isn't the first time we've had this conversation, and nothing's happened before. And maybe the volume's turned up right now, but the world that we live in, frankly, isn't one that makes you feel like, yeah, necessarily change is gonna come. So I understand that, but to me, like, optimism, and this is just probably a definition of it, is like optimism isn't about expecting change, but embracing it, and whatever form that it comes in. And optimism is more of a mindset than an outcome, right? You know, that's what it really comes down to. So like that, I respect that. Like, yeah, I'm probably on the same page as you. Like, I actually, in 30 days from now, I couldn't tell you if I think things will be different 30 days from now, because we may have moved on to the next fucking thing Trump did, or we may have moved on to the China fucking war as a society at that point. And that's a reality. It's a possibility. That's the world that we live in. I hope. Optimism is about like hope. I hope that something else will look a little bit different, or that we as a society have come together. We as a culture have spoken out enough, or brought enough attention to this, or kept the gas pedal down to have taken, even if it's a minor step, some steps, so that, like you said, the world that your daughter lives in is a better world than the one you grew up in. Yeah. Even if it's 1%.
Yeah.
I think also, you know, you've talked a lot about the responsibility that you guys have. And there's obviously a massive responsibility on the other side of the coin. One that is inherent and that shouldn't have to be said, but I also think that there is another responsibility that is coming to light as, you know, I think every time something like this becomes amplified and there is a wave of this emotion that goes towards it as a collective and is picked up, and we get into a situation like we are now, I think people jump on board. And I think the responsibility that people with privilege and the people who are joining the fight is just to spread. I think the way I look at it is like, if someone is pushing a stalled car and there's one person pushing and then another person begins to push and then another person begins to push, I think it's the responsibility, and the only way to get it is to get as many people pushing the car as possible. And I think, you know, Jojo, you can't talk to my parents. I mean, you can. You talk to my dad. You can't talk to a lot of people, but you can't have those conversations. But like I can, and I have, and I hopefully, you know, someone else, they talk to someone else, and then they talk to someone else. And I think the more perspective you can wrap around it, I think that's the thing, is like people want one-on-one conversations because they're seeking something that they can latch onto. That's not anyone's responsibility, but they're seeking something that they can relate to. I think I told Erwin this the other day, but you know, like white people can sympathize with a white kid who shoots up a school because he was bullied his whole life, because they know what it feels like to be bullied. And like, you can sympathize with that and you can begin to support that, but you can't sympathize with a black person because I'm not fucking black. But you can begin to tell me, I sat in this Brandbeats and listened to you guys talk. We can turn around and we can tell people the stories that you told. And I think that is the responsibility that we have. But I think that's the only way. It's turning that, you know, why the fuck are you looting? It's because you're fucking 400 years. Like, you can't sympathize with that. Like, it's just finding those things and making it click for people, that I think is the responsibility. You know, again, it's like, you could say like, I could talk to 1,000 people so that you don't have to talk to them, but you're still going to talk to 1,000 people more because there's way too many people who are on the wrong side of it. And I think but I think, you know, every 1,000 people you talk to, that's a whole other 1,000 people that they can talk to. So that's kind of, you know, I think this whole word of ally and this whole everybody sharing shit, I think if we can take all the bullshit out of it and make sure that we're all adding to the noise and adding to the people pushing the car, like that is, I won't call it optimism, but that's the strategy.
And JP, that's a good point. Yeah. I think it is about like non-Black people, like we're all accountable, right? And Jojo, you said it too. I mean, yes, as Asian Americans, we have struggled, but our struggles aren't even a fraction of like what Black people have experienced in this country, you know. And we just ended Asian American History Month last month, but the last few days, and I think I wrote about this on Twitter, but I was like, fuck this. Like, yes, it's time to, you know, we can celebrate our achievements. We can talk about what we've gone through, but like this isn't our time right now. Like, you know, we should be amplifying Black voices because your voices are the ones that matter the most right now, you know? And even just personally, like growing up, like all my heroes were Black. You know, I've consumed Black culture, the way I dress, and like the music I listen to, like everything I do revolves around Black culture. So, but yes, that, but like it's even bigger than that. You know, it's bigger than my Asian American identity. Like this is a human issue, and as a human being in America, it's your fucking responsibility to look out for everyone, to look out for Black people. You know, to make sure that these injustices don't happen. And it takes a movement, you know, and I think you're all right. Like right now we're in the very beginning stages of it, but like how can we continue this fire? How can we push it forward?
Well,
and again, like we're all responsible for this.
What I would say, to take it a little bit back to like duty, and this is a good point, because you know we talk about these things. There's duty on the other side. Is what I would charge others with doing is broadening perspective and seeking understanding on things that they never knew. Like if you are a person who can honestly ask yourself, I've never felt marginalized, or I've never felt like, in my entire life, I've never experienced feeling marginalized, I've never experienced feeling like a minority. Go out, pick up a fucking book of somebody who maybe has felt that. It's really easy to find. You know who they are. There's a million of them. They're fucking American classics. Pick up a book, read an autobiography. You will. I promise you will learn a lot of shit. Just like I did when I picked up the book of Malcolm X's autobiography, and I'm like, damn, I learned a lot about what the world was like back then that I didn't have to deal with, but created a lot of clarity and understanding. And you know, it will help you start to see, you know, what I think a lot of people struggle with is they look at the things that pop up as instances and then want to act like they're all gray, and like, yeah, there's complications, it is complications, but they're not recognizing like beyond that there's a pattern, and that's the thing you need to look at from like an understanding standpoint. So it's just the duty of all of us as human beings, Black, white, yellow, fucking brown, whatever, is seeking broader perspective and to try and understand. And I think right now, the important thing to take a look at is the topic at hand. And it's a good time to sort of, to have something that's a top of mind reminder to go, let me take a second to go, instead of picking up fucking some book about advancing my career, maybe I should pick up a book about broadening my perspective and being a little bit more empathetic or understanding of something I never even considered or thought about. Because right now you have this really amazing reminder about like, yeah, this is an important issue that people are dealing with, and it will go a long way. And I think in your ability to feel really comfortable with having a voice and a perspective with what's going on, not that you have the right to, but being thoughtful in terms of your role in the conversation too at the same time. Like you said, JP, you had this whole experience where somebody educated you, and that's all we're talking about. And now you feel, you're like, I learned a lot. And that's all that people can do. And I think that's all people are really asking for, is like, stop, take a second, try and understand perspectives, and then act accordingly. Mm-hmm. And act accordingly means like do something a little bit different to be a catalyst for that change that we all are hoping we see.
I think to even be more simplified than that, it's like the root of what's making a lot of people upset is that they're saying that is like all lives matter, right? Like all lives matter. So, you know, that leads to a lot of subgroups, including us. And if all lives matter, all we fucking want is to matter. So it's like, it doesn't matter if the subgroup of all lives matter. It's like Black people just want to feel like we have a seat at the table. And I hear music, right? We all associate this to like our favorite song, our favorite musician, our favorite athlete. And all at the end of the day we want to do is matter, to inflict positivity, to inspire. And it's like, if all life matters, we matter, period. Yeah. It doesn't have to go deeper than that. You can read into that, but at the end of the day, we just want to sit with you and discuss how we can be great.
That's right.
And all that is people being, all that is people being too insecure to accept that there is a discrepancy there. Mm-hmm. And that's the conversations that it is. It's when you talk to a white person who says all lives matter, and the argument that they go down, it's just them being too insecure and adamant that there is not a discrepancy there. And also being able to understand that that isn't like, it's not like it's an anomaly to this individual. It's just like a fact. And like,
I literally,
I mean,
I begin to like hate that statement. Well, no, I already hated that statement. More and more, just like, because it's so weird. Like even like the comedian Chris D'Elia like was bringing up, and he's not always the best person, but Chris D'Elia was bringing up, he was like, when you say Black Lives Matter and someone says all lives matter, you might as well just say I like bacon, because it's just a random fucking thing that has nothing to do with what we were talking about
with what's going on
at all. And like that, even that whole statement is to say like, okay, you're saying all lives matter, but let's have a conversation right now about Black people. Black Lives Matter. Like I even got into like this Instagram like back and forth with somebody who started talking about that same sort of thing, and they're like, America would be America even without Black people, and it's about the diversity and all the different cultures and races. And I'm like, you just said it's about diversity, cultures, and races. So one of those cultures is Black. And so if you remove Black from this like recipe, the final dish is not going to be the same, buddy. So America wouldn't be America.
Like here's the symbolism I like to say. Like I got 10 fingers, right? Like this is the problem. If somebody cuts off my fucking pinky and I go, pinkies matter, right? If somebody else comes in and goes, index fingers matter, I'm like, yeah, but right now my fucking pinky's cut off. And this is the thing I'm worried about. Like there's a problem with there's something at risk. And this is, I'm not saying that I don't agree that my index finger is important. I'm not saying let's trade these bitches. I'm saying right now I got a problem with my pinky, and I'd like to focus on that pinky problem. That's the equivalent of when people say want to like broaden it out from like Black Lives Matter to all. Yes, of course, we all know that.
And I was like, I feel like the larger issue with it is because it becomes super divisive and it splits our attention, essentially, right?
Yep, right.
And so very similar to like when we talk about guns and then people start bringing up mental health and then Black on Black crime, you're like, hold on, I thought we were talking about guns. Like if we just talk about guns, maybe we can solve the gun issue. But now you bring up all these other issues, and now we're all focused on like, okay, maybe we can solve mental health, maybe we can solve this, and maybe we can go back to the guns. Like if we keep saying and people keep saying all lives matter, then we're never going to solve any issue. Like it's our time right now, and then if another issue happens, like let's focus directly on that issue, and if another atrocity happens, let's focus directly on that. If we solve singular issues at a time, that's how change happens. It doesn't happen by us literally being spread thin and trying to focus on every issue. Also, another like big issue I have with it was like no one had a problem when it was like blackfish and we were all focused on like whales. No one was bringing up like other whales matter, dolphins matter, goldfish matter. No one was saying that when it came to whales. Why are they saying it with Black people? Like that to me was like, that's been like
because fish didn't require someone to acknowledge something about themselves.
True.
By someone saying that index fingers matters because I have a pinky, but I don't want to say that like I have something that you don't.
Yeah. Right.
My analogy that I actually use to a lot of people, and I feel like this is kind of like more cultural based, because I was just like, imagine that you are this like white parent and you want kids really badly and you adopt a Black child, because this is the subject, right? It's like, oh, white people with Black kids. You adopt this Black child, not because they're Black, but because you actually kind of care and you want to like rescue this Black child. And you're just like, oh, I don't know how to do Black hair. They got this kinky curly hair. Like, what the fuck do I do with it? So you just put that shit in a ponytail and you're like, oh, it ain't nice, but I still adopted this Black child. And it's like, no, you got the Kim Kardashian that shit. You got to do research. You actually have to go to a Black person and figure out how to do Black kids' hair, because you chose to live in a society where Black people are around you. You can go to somewhere else, a private island where it's only y'all. You know what I mean? But you were living in a society where it's us, and you chose to adapt to us. You chose me. So now you got to take care of me. How are you going to take care of me? You don't have the answer. You need to figure out how to do my fucking hair. Call an auntie. Call Kim Kardashian, figure it out. get on YouTube, read a fucking book, but you have to learn how to take care of me. And like putting my hair in a ponytail will only be like a temporary solve, but you actually have to figure it out. And to me, that's kind of like the basis of what we're going through as a society. It's like Black culture is cool, you know what I mean? And me adopting a Black child is cool, but like to actually relate to it, to know the end game, to raise this child, to raise a Black man in this society where like I'm a white woman and I don't know how to. You can't do it by guessing. You actually have to figure that shit out. You actually have to entrust in other people to teach you. And I think it's important that we teach that. Otherwise, that Black man is going to grow up confused. He's going to grow up with an identity crisis. He's going to grow up with a lot of these mental issues that I can't fix as his future girlfriend, or I can't fix as a future like auntie or a support in his life. Like you actually have to start while you first adapted to, why it's in your face, why you give a fuck about it. Start there. Figure it out. Care about it. Grow it. Sorry, that's Kim Kardashian.
No, it's a problem. Interracial parents have long dealt with that. Like, I don't know how to do this child's hair. We gotta learn.
Right here. What? It's curly. Ooh.
It's happening.
Yeah, what? You got a fro? Just cut that shit off. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's understanding. And like, again, like Eric, you mentioned like Black culture is cool, but what happens when it infiltrates your home? What happens when you have a mixed baby? What happens when you have a Black boyfriend or girlfriend? What happens when like your brother or sister brings a Black person home, or your kid brings a Black person home, and you've only lived this one way for your entire life? Are you going to make that person feel bad because you don't understand it? Or are you going to try? And I've been in other subcultures where I've been like this Black person in their home that's not white, but it's also not accepted to be Black. And it's a challenge, but we work through it, and it only comes with understanding.
Oh, sorry, that was.
She heard you talking about kids.
Darn. I was like, no one who's listening to this Brandbeats is gonna realize that your kid just walked by and I just like they're gonna be like, he sounded really disingenuous.
Yeah, it's for her, and it'll always be for her, and I will never do this without her. And I just think about the next generation, and it's like, if for y'all who don't even have kids, for y'all who are uncles, or for y'all who plan on adopting, like my daughter, looking at her at the age of 3, she's more powerful than I ever was. And it's because she sees me, she learns from me. It's like okay, baby, hold on. I learned how to be quiet. I couldn't have a voice as a kid. I was like, know a child's place. And when I tell her that, she says, fuck that. I don't give a fuck what you got to say. I have a place on this earth and you're going to listen to it. Whether it's wrong or right, like I learn a lot from her. And she's actually inspired me to have a voice, because again, like even in the Black community, it's like, that's not right, because I had to be quiet, because I had to be in a marriage of 70 years where I've been cheated on, or I have been oppressed. I can't have a voice. And she's in the background. She's like, I don't give a fuck what you doing right now.
I was gonna say, I think on our next conversation, so like if we might do like a Brandbeats next week. On our next one, we should like talk about the color on color issue. Like dive in again. To whoever's listening, we're gonna try and continue these conversations, because these are important conversations to have. Brandbeats has always been about like having like hard conversations, critiquing the industry, etc. And right now, this is the conversation within culture, and we're going to continue to have it and amplify these moments and these voices.
Yeah.
That wasn't like the final word. So if y'all have,
it should be, because I'm like, she gotta go.
All right, yeah, we gotta go. Thank you for tuning in to Brandbeats.
I love that.
No, but I appreciate you guys inviting me to this. No, dead ass. I really do. And all I ever wanted to do was make an impact, whether I knew what to say or didn't, or if I was an entrepreneur, or a follower, whether I had my own voice that people listen to in a small setting or a large setting. Me being a Black woman, I have been at the bottom of the barrel for a really long time, but there's a reason why white people listen to me. There's a reason why Black people listen to me, or any ethnicity listens to me. It's because I have a fucking voice. And I know it's influential, and you guys gave me that platform, and for that I'm very grateful. So I'm excited to keep this going.
Oh, we love you, JoJo.
Oh, we love you, JoJo.
Say that on Monday,
Love you, JoJo.
Andrew.
Say that. Remember that on Monday? Shit.
Yeah, remember that on Monday.
I don't even know what you're referring to. I'm scared now. I gotta think about this all weekend.
Hold on, did anybody have questions?
What
Probably
happened
not.
in the?
Probably
There were a
not.
lot of comments for sure.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100 people.
Any all lives matter, so we can dig into it?
No,
Yeah, let's dig.
thankfully not.
Oh, hold on. What's that girl? I want everybody to follow her. JoJo, the one who calls out people. Like beat it. Like everybody needs to follow this girl. She's doing God's work.
Everybody.
She is doing God's work. Again, it's not her responsibility, but she is like taking it upon herself to meet people where they are, to go 100%.
A Black woman, Natasha Dot Camille.
Mhm.
Don't go to college being a racist, because this bitch is gonna call your ass out and you're gonna lose your fucking scholarship. And good for fucking you. Lose that scholarship.
And if you see this you in your DMs, you fucked.
You fucks. We coming for you. Deadass. You have nothing to fight for besides being a asshole. And I hope you lose your scholarship, because I ain't get college for free. I'm still in debt.
Was there any comments that we should address, or like should we address next time? Again, we're gonna have this conversation.
A lot of book recommendations.
Nice.
What else?
A lot of affirmations.
A lot of claps for JoJo. So good job, JoJo. Thanks for speaking your truth.
So you just.
I'll allow it. I'll
That's
allow
pretty
it.
We're not gonna do this right here. We're not gonna.
We'll take this offline.
Offline.
But yeah, if people are still listening, I think we're gonna try and do this like weekly. Even if it doesn't necessarily release as the Brandbeats podcast, I think it's just an open forum for conversation, continuous conversation. That's the goal. And like we said at the top of this show, right now is about reducing the safe space for people to hide, so that there is honest and open conversation, because those honest and open conversations create opportunity for empathy. And that's ultimately what's needed, is empathy in this world, so that we and you guys can understand us, and we can even begin to understand people who we might hate. But again, conversation about Black people, so understand us.
I would say empathy under the matter that Black lives fucking matter, period. I don't want to hear nothing else. Like, we can empathize, but under the topic that like we deserve, all right? Like all the other shit's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Last thing from me real quick, because I know we got to get out of here. But non-Black POCs, this time for me has been about just like introspection and confronting my own biases and prejudices. So I challenge you all to do the same. You know, like think about ways in which you're perpetuating anti-Blackness and racism, and you know, none of us are safe. Like we've all been there. So I challenge you all to just like look inside yourselves, do better, you know. And Asian dudes that wear fucking do-rags and put your hair in dreadlocks, like you're corny as fuck. So do better. That's it for me.
You use a cheese.
It's cold.
But they are, because there's no need for do-rags. Like,
Wait, what do you mean, man? You need waves.
No, I'm saying there's a need for Black people to wear. There's a need for Black people to wear do-rags. Like,
it needs to be flat in the back too. I get it, but like we created that shit for your shit to be flat in the back. Like,
it makes no sense when I see other people wearing do-rags. I'm like, this is y'all. You look like a clown. So yeah, You look like clowns. You're not. You're like feeding off of Black culture, but you're doing it in a really dumb way. Like, yeah.
We're just saying, if you're gonna do it, you better be out there supporting us.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be protest, but like.
Well, no, I mean it's fine. Like you say this, like keep making people uncomfortable, have uncomfortable conversations, or go out and protest peacefully or whatever. But keep making people uncomfortable, because the only way people will get shit put in their attention is when it's inconvenient for them. And that's when people open up, to Erwin's point, like what he was putting out before. I mean, the thing I would charge people with is just like broaden your perspective and act fucking accordingly. Like that's all it really takes to take some small step.
You should be uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, fucking get out there, stand up, donate, like protest. Like, be uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah.
Saturday, if you're in San Diego, it's a huge one happening.
Yes,
come out
tomorrow, 2 p.m.
Come out. I think. Black women.
Where's it? Yes. Where's it at? Where's it
Just
at?
go outside. It doesn't even matter. If you're downtown, fucking go outside.
Just
we're out.
go outside. It's
It's everywhere.
Just go outside.
At 2 p.m. 2 p.m. Step outside and scream. That's all it takes.
Like, what you gonna do?
That's what we need. You like all the shit that happened. Like, look, for months now, there's been a bunch of people at 8 p.m. every day coming outside, and rightfully so, supporting. All you actually really need to do is like be like, oh, if I can make somebody hear something that's maybe got the TV off or hasn't heard this shit or doesn't give a fuck, you know, when you just act as an inconvenient reminder, like every day, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. People fucking are going to work every day and supporting the healthcare system. It really takes something as simple as that. So 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Yep, disrupt. That's it.
I gotta pee, so I love y'all.
Oh, okay. Black Power. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for tuning in,
really
y'all. We appreciate everyone. See you later.
Okay, bye.